you're carrying more body fat than you'd like and you want to get to a sub 10% body fat where you have a cover model physique, this is the exact roadmap that I've used for myself and my clients time and time again to get them looking, feeling and performing at their best. And really importantly, without wrecking your life in the process. Look, I've been through this exact process myself. I was 4.5 stone overweight. I had energy slumps every single day. I felt awful in my own body. I didn't have any confidence. And I underwent this strategy and this process to get to a position where I was lean, I was jacked, and I did numerous photo shoots. And I wasn't in the fitness industry at this point. I was working 80 hours a week, commuting 90 minutes each way. I was doing a degree and I was starting my first business in the e-commerce space. I was a busy man. And since that point, I've taken hundreds and hundreds of clients through that exact roadmap. Real people, real executives, real entrepreneurs with real schedules and real lives. Not just people that have hours and hours to spend prepping and chefing their own meals or spending their whole lives in the gym. So this isn't just theory. This is step by step in practice what actually works for real people. But first, I want to break it down into phases on what this journey is going to look like for you. And phase one is called the foundations. I call it the foundations because if you're trying to build a house without foundations, it might go up block by block quicker, but it would quickly fall down at the first sign of adversity. So this is not about going from 0 to 100 straight away. It's about doing the basics really well. So here, what we're going to do is find a calorie target and actually just start tracking our calories. We're going to find a protein target and start tracking our protein. We're going to get a few more steps in and just get you a little bit more active. And we're going to get you in the gym a few times a week and just build that habit in there too. Like I say, the goal here is habit building and momentum. It is not perfection. And I don't want you setting yourselves up thinking that you have to be perfect straight away, because this is what causes so many people to fall off track. And within a month or two of just doing this, you're going to notice pretty quickly that you start feeling a lot better, your energy's in a better position throughout the afternoon, your clothes fit a bit better, and the scale weight is probably going down as well. So this phase is the foundation for everything else to be built on. Do not skip it. Phase two, this is where we're going to put the gas pedal to the floor. For me, this is the most exciting phase because you're going to get the best visual results in terms of how you look, and those visible changes are going to start showing up week on week. You're going to start seeing new veins popping through on your arms, a little bit more leanness around your abs, and you're going to start getting compliments from people that haven't seen you in a little while. This is where you're probably going to go from 20% body fat with a little bit of a belly on you to around about 15%. And at this point, compared to the foundations phase, your diet is going to get a little bit more dialed in, but you still do have room for socials and things slightly off plan. This phase isn't David Goggins levels of discipline just yet. You can still enjoy the odd beer out and the odd weekend. But phase three, typically you have a decision to make here. Do I want to go to sub 10% body fat? For some people, it's not worth it, but for most, it is. For most men, I do recommend getting to sub 10% body fat at one point in their life. The reason being is the things that it does for your confidence as a man is absolutely astronomical. When you get that lean, you look in the mirror and you think, is that actually me? You start walking past car windows and thinking, is that my physique? Or like my client Johnny said when he did his photo shoot the other week, he said,
I used to look at people like that on the front of magazine covers and think, how the hell did they get to that position?
But there's also a strategic upside to getting this lean. When you finish your diet, it gives you a little bit of wiggle room if you're going to put on a kilo or two after. Because if you do that from that position, you're going to stay pretty damn lean anyway. Because let's say you do have a little bit of a bounce back, you're going to go from say 9% to 11 or 12%, as opposed to going from 15% to 18 or 19%. So you're still going to be lean with your abs fully on show. And then you're going to be able to maintain this point. So let's get into the exact roadmap that you're going to follow to get yourself to that position, no matter your starting point right now. So we're going to start with diet, and to start with, we need to get you a calorie target. Now, to give you a rough idea, you're going to start your calories somewhere between 10 to 12 times your body weight in pounds. So if your body weight is 200 pounds, that's going to look somewhere between 2,000 and 2,400 calories. What I would recommend is starting towards the higher end of that and seeing how your results come in. If you're getting results on the higher end, then there's no need to change anything. If you're not seeing the results after implementing this, we can drop the calories a little bit lower. To get a bit more of a personalized number, you can use a calorie calculator. Now, you could go onto Google and you could just Google calorie calculators, and it's going to come up with hundreds or probably thousands of options for you to use, but they all use the same generic calculation. And what that does is it doesn't give you any flexibility around the week, so it just gives you a flat number to hit. Now, I've actually created you a calorie calculator that is going to give you not only a calorie target, it's going to give you a protein target, but it's also going to give you the ability to adjust days. What that means is that if you need to have a high day of calories on a Saturday because you have a social occasion or a networking event, you can just pull that day and it's going to automatically adjust the rest of the days to the amount of calories that you need. This is available for free on a link just below this video. It takes 10 or 20 seconds to do. Make sure that you go and do that to get your calorie target. Number two on diet is your macronutrients, and most importantly, your protein. You need to have a protein target you're hitting day in, day out. And there's a few reasons behind this. Number one is that protein is going to be a building block of your muscle. And ultimately, if you want to keep your muscle at a very minimum or gain muscle whilst you're in a dieting phase, then you need to make sure that you're getting enough protein to even be giving yourself a chance of that. The target I want you aiming for is somewhere between 0.8 and 1.2 grams per pound of body weight. But again, if you use my calculator that's linked below, it's going to give you a target. Another bonus of getting enough protein in your diet is that it's actually going to satiate you as well. If you eat a high protein diet, you're going to find yourself a lot less hungry than if those calories were coming from carbohydrates or fats. And then the third tip in diet is making sure that 80 to 90% of your foods are coming from good whole food sources. Now, I'm a big believer that there should be some flexibility in the diet, and you should be able to keep some of what you want in your diet, whether that be ice cream or chocolate or pizza. However, 80% or 90% of your food should be from whole food sources. So if you're on 2,000 calories, that means that leaves 200 to 400 calories for flexible calories every single day. But this is important because it's going to look after your long-term health as well as just helping you lose body fat. And it's also going to look after your energy, your focus and productivity throughout the day as well. So next, we're going to come on to training. One of the biggest mistakes that I see with training when in a fat loss phase is just trying to do way too much. This trips you up because if you're trying to train 5 or 6 days a week, what happens is when you miss a session, you mentally get yourself into this position where you start spiraling. You think, oh, I'm just not disciplined enough, I can't stick to it. And then you start falling off plan and making bad decisions. So I want to set you up for success. And actually, this is just as optimal as training 5 or 6 days a week. I want you to train 3 days per week. If you do this correctly, you're training each muscle group 3 times throughout the week and giving yourself 3 opportunities to progress that muscle group throughout the week as well. Not only this, but let's say if you do 1 chest day in the week and that chest day has 18 sets of chest. By the time you come to your last exercises, your chest is absolutely fried and you're not getting anywhere near your best lifts out of it. However, if we split those same 18 sets throughout the week, you have more time to recover and you're going to be performing better in the gym anyway. So I just want you training 3 days a week and doing full body or maybe upper, lower, upper. The vast majority of my clients only train 3 days, some 4 days per week, and they still get results like this. Your focus with your training should be on building and retaining the muscle that you've got. The goal of your training is not to lose body fat. That is going to happen in the kitchen from getting your nutritional choices right and also from just getting your general activity right, which I'm going to come on to in a second. During your training, it's really important that you're trying to add stimulus every week through something called progressive overload. This means making your training a slight bit harder each and every week, so we're not just doing the same thing over and over again. This could be really simple, like adding a rep, adding a little bit of weight, improving your tempo, improving your form, improving your execution. You don't need to overcomplicate it, but you need to give your body the stimulus it requires in order to grow, in order to change. If you do this whilst nailing your diet at the same time, it is possible to grow muscle whilst you're in that dieting phase, or at least retain the muscle that you've got so you're not getting smaller. So the next thing that you need to make sure that you're doing is getting your general activity and your steps into the right position. Why this is so important is there's something called non-exercise activity thermogenesis, or NEAT for short. Now NEAT is basically your movement outside of planned exercise. This is your steps, it's your walking, your fidgeting, it's when you're cooking and moving a frying pan, or any other movements that you can think of. Now your NEAT is responsible for 15% of your daily calories burnt. For reference, your gym work is responsible for around about 5% of your calories burnt. So this number, if we can improve it drastically, is going to completely change the amount of calories that you burn and the results that you see. And the problem that I see with a lot of entrepreneurs and executives is that they're so desk-based that their step count on their watch or their wearable is just so low. And I get it, you feel like you're too busy to get a decent amount of steps in and you really struggle because of that. So I'm not going to be asking you to go from an average of 3,000 or 4,000 to going straight up to 12 or 15,000 right away. What I want you to do is have a look at your average on your wearable or on your phone's health app and just go from whatever that average is to adding 2,000. Now there is a stipulation to this. I want you doing a bare minimum of 7,000 to 8,000 steps. Now the reason behind that is because the research shows that 7,000 to 8,000 steps is imperative for long-term heart health. So if you're at 5,000 steps average at the moment, just go to 7,000 or 8,000. If you're currently at 8,000, go to 10,000. Down the line, we can then use activity as a tool to lose more fat when we do hit a plateau. And that brings me on to plateaus. If you do hit a plateau on your fat loss journey, which is completely normal, what you're going to do is make one of two adaptations. Number one is either bring your calories down, and you can do this just by adjusting your calories by around about 150 to 200 per day. Or number two is by taking your activity up. So you're going to increase your step count further, or at that point, we might look to input some cardio into your lifestyle. What this is doing is just getting us over that plateau by widening that calorie deficit and making sure that we get in a calorie deficit. Plateaus are normal because what happens as we get smaller, we require less calories to sustain ourselves, and therefore we've got to pull ourselves back into that calorie deficit as we go. Now you might find going from that 15% to that 10% where you're lean to really lean is really difficult when you do this, because you hit a plateau at 15% and you feel like you're already pushing hard, and you have to go to another level to get to that 10%, but it's completely and utterly worth it for how you feel. And along the way of this journey, there's plenty other tips and tricks that you can be implementing to make your journeys a little bit easier, such as diet breaks or deloads at the right point. But if you do nail those staples that I've just mentioned, and you consistently do that for a long enough period, then you're going to get yourself fantastic results, and you could take yourself from having a belly to being under 10% body fat and jacked. So if that sounds like something that you want to do, the first step is your calories and protein. Make sure that you go and hit the link that is in the description of this video that's going to give you those exact numbers that you need to stick to, but also shows you how to adjust it throughout the week if you want some high days in there as well. And if this video did help, then make sure that you're subscribed, because this channel is all about getting driven people like yourself into fantastic shape and looking, feeling and performing their best.